Campaign trail pulse. Presidential nominees respond to questions about their health. Family first. How Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton say they'll help expectant parents. Protecting the faithful. The Hungarian ambassador to the Holy See tells me how his country will protect persecuted Christians. And first-class relics. How two saints are being remembered here in the United States. On EWTN News Nightly for September 15th, 2016. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Jason Calvi in for Brian Patrick. Health is a hot topic in the presidential race. Hillary Clinton returns to the campaign trail after suffering from pneumonia, and Donald Trump reveals more of his own health records. But it's a story about prescription birth control that's getting attention from Catholics. Wyatt Goolsby has that story.
Why not share your medical records? Why not?
Well, I have really no problem in doing it. I have it right here.
While revealing the results of a recent physical exam, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump told the Dr. Oz show's studio audience he believes women should be able to obtain birth control without a prescription. In the interview, Trump told Dr. Oz some women just aren't in a position to go get a prescription. Trump says he remains opposed to abortion, as does his pro-life running mate, Mike Pence. Dr. Grazie Christie, a policy advisor for the Catholic Association, says contraception like the pill and other forms of birth control have become so commonplace, many politicians don't realize the potential medical dangers.
It causes blood clots, it causes stroke, and it even promotes certain kinds of cancer. If women were better informed, they would likely choose something, if they were going to use birth control, that would be more natural and more healthy for their bodies.
Because of the risks, Dr. Christie believes getting birth control without a doctor's supervision is not a good idea. Christie herself remains opposed to all forms of contraception, instead promoting an openness to life.
I am so honored to accept this endorsement of the Planned Parenthood Action Fund.
It should be noted that Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton has pledged to defend access to affordable contraception and safe and legal abortion, not just in principle, but in practice. Wyatt Goolsby, EWTN News Nightly.
Thanks, Wyatt. Hillary Clinton has suffered a sinus infection, ear infection, and pneumonia this year. The nominee's personal doctor shared those details in a letter. The letter also contained a list of her current medications. Some help prevent blood clots, others treat allergies. Her blood pressure, heart rate, and cholesterol all within normal ranges. This is Donald Trump shared information with TV's Dr. Oz. Trump talked about his lack of exercise, but he says he feels as good as he did when he was 30. Trump hit the campaign trail today, speaking to the Economic Club of New York. He criticizes Clinton over taxes, regulations, and the redistribution of wealth.
The only people who get rich under Hillary Clinton are the donors and the special interests, but bad for our country.
A new poll shows Trump and Clinton tied nationally. The latest CBS News New York Times poll finds both nominees locked in at 42% among likely voters. That's in a four-way race with Libertarian Party nominee Gary Johnson and Green Party nominee Jill Stein. And we told you this week about how Trump and Clinton campaigns are promoting their child care plans. Trump says he supports 6 weeks of paid maternity leave, tax deductions for stay-at-home parents, and tax breaks for families. While Clinton favors 12 weeks of paid leave for new parents, free preschool for 4-year-olds, and a 10% cap on childcare expenses. To talk about that, Paige Winfield Cunningham is with us, healthcare reporter for the Washington Examiner. Why do you think the campaigns are both pushing childcare at this point?
Well, it's not a big surprise, Hillary, as she's backed family leave policies for a long time. But what this shows us is Trump really is only dancing to the beat of his own drum when it comes to policy and really bucking the Republican establishment. House Speaker Paul Ryan doesn't support a mandatory paid leave, nor do most other Republicans. But when you look at our economy, 4 in 10 households with children now, the woman is the primary breadwinner. And so I think that you see the Trump campaign trying to kind of respond to that situation and say, hey, it's not just the Democrats who are going to push for these kinds of policies. The question is, it kind of puts Republicans in a little bit of a tough spot as to whether they're going to support his plan.
So he might promote it even if he is president, but he might not get it through a Republican Congress, it looks like.
Right. That's a big outstanding question. But Trump really is the person to gain under this. He's really struggled with female voters. I mean, obviously, the Democrats do better among women, but Trump's doing especially poorly. Like 75% of women have a negative image of him, and 65% have a very negative image. So he really, I think, is trying to make up ground by appealing to women by this policy announcement.
It's interesting because Governor Mike Pence was with House Republicans this week, and he actually mentioned that internal polling was showing Trump winning the married female vote. So we'll see what happens in November if those polls are true. But looking at both plans, do you see one of the candidates having an edge with the female voters based on what you're seeing in these plans?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Trump's flavor is more of a Republican flavor. So it's only 6 weeks as opposed to 12 weeks. He says the whole thing would be paid for by cleaning up waste in an existing insurance program that employers already have to pay into. Clinton's plan would be a lot more expensive. But I do think that Trump is the person who could win out here if this does appeal. And it really polls well among voters, even among Republican voters. A majority of people say they would like to see some kind of mandatory paid family leave.
Interesting to see where this goes in the future. Healthcare was also huge on the campaign trail this week with the personal health of the candidates. How do you think this is going to play out in November, if at all?
You know, I think on Election Day, most voters may just see this as a blip in the election. I think that if it came out that either candidate had some big chronic condition or some really serious condition, that might affect the vote. But I think both candidates now have released medical details from their doctors showing that overall they're pretty healthy. Trump might stand to lose a few pounds, as we learned today, but both of them seem to be in good health once Clinton recovers from this pneumonia. So I would be surprised if it really swung the election one way or the other.
Well, we'll see what happens. We've got it just under 2 months now until we all vote. But thank you very much, Paige Winfield Cunningham with the Washington Examiner. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. Police in Florida say a suspect has confessed to setting fire to the mosque attended by the Orlando nightclub shooter. 32-year-old Joseph Schreiber has confessed, Joseph Schreiber faces arson and hate crime charges. The ex-convict could be sentenced to life in prison if convicted. Police say video and tips led them to Schreiber. Investigators say he also posted anti-Islamic rants online. The new president of the Philippines faces strong accusations tonight. A former militiaman says Rodrigo Duterte ordered him and others to kill criminals and opponents. The witness testified today before the Filipino Senate. Human rights groups have accused Duterte of involvement in death squads. He denies the accusations. The United Nations says it's still having trouble getting aid into Syria. That despite a ceasefire agreement. 2 trucks from Turkey made it across the border to deliver food, but most deliveries are blocked. A UN envoy blames the Syrian government for not approving the shipments. The ceasefire has now slashed violence in the 4-year-old civil war. In a world first, Hungary's government sets up a new office to stop the persecution of Christians. It will focus on Christians under threat worldwide. The country will also keep tabs on discrimination aimed at Christians in Europe. Ambassador Habsburg is the Hungarian ambassador to the Holy See. Ambassador, why this initiative and why now?
Well, Hungary considers itself a Christian country and has been silently helping persecuted Christians in the Middle East for quite a while now, while not talking loudly about it. So in a way, it's very consequential that Hungary does this. Why now? I think the moment it happened was in Frascati at a conference of Catholic legislators, which is fun because Viktor Orban, the Hungarian Prime Minister, and his minister, Balogh Zoltán, are both Calvinists. But they were at this Catholic legislator conference, met with patriarchs from the Middle East, listened to their stories about persecution of Christians, and decided very spontaneously to open an office inside one of the ministries that will take care, from the Hungarian point of view, of that project with a budget and with lots of enthusiasm. So that's how it came about, just a few days ago in Rome.
And I know that your country is investing about 3 million euros into this project. What will you do for the Middle Eastern Christians, Christians around the world, and I believe also Christians in Europe as well?
Yes. Well, this is all, of course, right now in the making as we're talking. The idea is to do several things at once. One of them is humanitarian help on spot, not only in the Middle East, but everywhere in the world where Christians are being persecuted. The other one is monitoring. We want to have an information központ, as we say in Hungary, a center from which we observe, we watch, and we inform the government, but also the press on persecution of Christians. And you are absolutely right. We will keep an eye open for the more clandestine and silent persecution of Christians that is being felt in Europe too.
And what would that be? What are some examples of some of the persecution within your own continent?
Well, it's becoming more difficult to be a Christian. You're not allowed to wear crosses at certain places. Crosses are being removed in schools. And people have problems because they're a Christian or stand for Christian values. All of these things we'll be monitoring, but our central focus is really persecuted Christians who pay with their life or with their security because they're Christians. And Hungary has been working in this field. We've built a school for refugees for 660,000 euro some months ago. We have helped the families of those Christians that were killed near the Mediterranean by IS. And several of these projects have been going on for quite a while. Now it's going to be more focused, it's going to be more visible, and we are hoping to send a signal with this. The problem is that helping Christians has a sort of bad taste to it. If you help Christians, somehow you exclude all the other religions and the atheists and the agnostic. No, you don't, of course. But Hungary thinks that somebody has to help the Christians. We are aware that every 5 minutes a Christian dies for his faith, and we want to do something about it.
Thank you so much for doing that. A world first, setting up this government office. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for your time.
Thank you.
And as the ambassador just said, Hungary's decision comes after their prime minister joined Catholic lawmakers from around the world. We recently caught up with an American congressman who tells us he too was inspired by a meeting he and other lawmakers had with Pope Francis. The Holy Father asked them this.
I know you're Catholic, and I believe that you are devout and committed. What are you doing about it? How does that translate into action? How does it actually help people? That's a very powerful message. We can sit here and talk about it in terms of political rhetoric, but when the Holy Father asks you to your face, it sort of sticks in your mind.
What did you say? What was your response in your head, at least when the Holy Father said that to you?
I'm not going back next year if we haven't done anything. I can't face him next year again without knowing in my heart we've actually accomplished something.
We spoke with the congressman at a recent gathering of In Defense of Christians, a group that lobbies for persecuted Middle Eastern Christians around the world. Coming up, a growing debate over bathroom privacy, how new gender rules even impact some churches. And more than a meeting, world leaders discuss ways to protect our oceans. Some advice from Pope Francis on this feast day of Our Lady of Sorrows. Look to your Mother Mary when facing a crisis. The Holy Father reminds us Our Lady will take care of us, defend us, and teach us. Francis spoke this morning during his Mass at Santa Marta. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jason Calvi, in for Brian Patrick. President Obama creates America's first Atlantic Ocean monument. It's designed to protect nearly 5,000 square miles of underwater canyons and mountains, all off the New England coast. Obama calls it a vital investment.
Vital for our economy, it is vital for our foreign policy, it's vital for our national security, but it's also vital for our spirit. It's vital to who we are.
Supporters say this is important to protect species and the environment. Fishermen say the president is making it harder for them to earn a living. All public places like restaurants in Massachusetts must allow guests to use the bathroom of their choice. That starts this October. The state's Commission Against Discrimination says it also applies to churches. The commission's gender identity guidance states even a church could be seen as a place of public accommodation if it holds a secular event, such as a spaghetti supper that is open to the general public. Let's talk about that now with Peter Sprigg, Senior Fellow at the Family Research Council. Peter, what problem do you think this poses for Christians?
I think it poses a very fundamental problem of interfering with the free exercise of religion, which is a constitutional right. Historically, we've always granted the widest possible latitude to churches to govern the activities within their own buildings, those that are motivated by their faith and so forth. So I think this is a shocking invasion by the Massachusetts government into the activity of a church.
You saw in that quote we just put up on the screen, it says a secular event like a spaghetti dinner could be seen. It makes this a place of public accommodation. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this shows a fundamental misunderstanding of what churches are about, because churches do not have any events that are truly secular. A spaghetti supper at a church is a ministry opportunity. And while all churches that I know open their doors to everyone, they also have the right to set standards for the activities that take place within their building.
So they would say having that spaghetti dinner, having that pancake breakfast is part of their ministry.
It's a form of outreach. It's a way of reaching out to the community to the extent that they're bringing in people who are not members of their church to attend an event like that. It's only because they want to have the opportunity to share the gospel with them.
Now, the other side would accuse you, though, of discrimination. How do you respond to that when you hear that?
Well, this is not really an issue of discrimination. It's really a clash of worldviews. I mean, there is nobody who's being excluded from most churches that I know. Certainly there are a lot of events that are open to the public. They want people from the public to come. And with respect to the specific issue of the bathrooms, nobody is saying that there are certain people who aren't allowed to use the bathroom. The question is, we have bathrooms designated for men and for women. The real question is, how do you define who's a man and who's a woman? Traditionally, we've believed that should be done on the basis of their biological sex at birth. Now there's a movement that says that should be based on their psychological gender identity, which may conflict with their biological sex. This is a clash of worldviews, and they're mutually incompatible. But the law, the Constitution certainly does not establish one as superior to the other.
Really quickly, do you think there'll be lawsuits on this Massachusetts order?
If there are, I don't think the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination will fare very well. This is one area where I am reasonably confident, not certain, but reasonably confident that the Supreme Court would uphold the right of a church to set their own standards in their own building.
So we'll see if it goes that far, but thank you very much, Peter Sprigg from the Family Research Council. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Up next, a first for America where Padre Pio's one-of-a-kind relic will be venerated. And remembering St. Thomas More, a national shrine offers you a new look at his life.
More papal advice tonight. Pope Francis suggests looking at others and saying, how can I make the other feel worthy? He made the suggestion today when speaking to members of the Italian Biblical Association. His topic, humans made in the image of God. Thanks for joining us this evening. I'm Jason Calvi, sitting in for Brian Patrick. Well, Mother Angelica pointed the way to Christ, and now people can follow her on a literal way. The city of Irondale, that's the home of EWTN, is renaming a portion of road Mother Angelica Way. Tomorrow, Irondale Mayor Tommy Joe Alexander and EWTN Chairman and CEO Michael Warsaw will unveil the new memorial sign. And Padre Pio's heart is coming to Boston, literally. It's the first time a major relic of St. Pio of Pietrelcina has left Italy. The public may view his heart in Boston next Wednesday through his feast day next Friday. Catherine Zeltner spoke with one of the organizers of this special event.
Father Paul Soper is the Cabinet Secretary for Evangelization and Discipleship in the Archdiocese of Boston. Father, how did this come about? How is this major relic winding up in Boston for Padre Pio's feast day?
Well, we think it's a beautiful story. Of course, our Archbishop, Cardinal Sean O'Malley, is a Capuchin and continues to have very deep relationships within the Capuchin community. Padre Pio is a Capuchin, and his relics are guarded by the Capuchins. So they offered, and the Cardinal was thrilled, and so it's coming to Boston.
What are you hoping the faithful take away from this visit? Really, what role can relics play in our faith?
They can go a long way toward helping us to connect with the mystery of the cross. The cross is lived out in the lives of every saint. Certainly, the cross is lived out in the lives of the martyrs. We think about the witnesses to St. Polycarp's martyrdom way back in the year 155 AD, when they watched him being burned to death, and then they went and they collected his bones, and they found that these were holy objects that helped them to connect to the cross in Polycarp's life. And we go forward 1900 years later, and we're finding the same mystery being lived out in the lives of our 20th and 21st century saints.
During this year of mercy especially, what kind of example is Padre Pio to the faithful?
Padre Pio is an extraordinary example to us of the way in which the cross of Jesus gets extended throughout history, or perhaps better said, that all of history gets wrapped around the mystery of the cross of Jesus. Padre Pio was a stigmatist. The stigmata, the wounds of Christ on the cross were visible in his flesh. But more than that, he also bore much of the spiritual suffering of Jesus on the cross in his own heart. And of course, we associate a spiritual suffering as being a mystery of the heart, a thing going on in the heart, which makes especially the coming of his heart here to Boston a particularly blessed moment for us. In this year of mercy, all of our focus is on the merciful love of Jesus expressed on the cross. We think the heart of Padre Pio can be a wonderful connection for our people to that.
Father Paul Soper from the Archdiocese of Boston, thank you so much for your work and for speaking with us today.
Thank you very much.
And thanks to Catherine. Finally tonight, we get an exclusive look at a new holy exhibit. Mark Irons takes us to the St. John Paul II National Shrine for an up-close look at a man for all seasons, St. Thomas More.
You may have read about the lives of the saints.
It's been very carefully restored and placed in this perspex.
But it's not often you see their relics up close.
This was Thomas More's own crucifix, which he wore until his death.
For the first time ever, a number of artifacts and actual relics of St. Thomas More are on display in the United States, here at the St. John Paul II National Shrine. This 16th century English saint was imprisoned and then killed for his faith.
So he's a model for all sorts of things for us.
Carl Anderson, Supreme Knight of the Knights of Columbus, says now is a fitting time to learn about the saint.
I think as we look around at the kinds of issues we're facing as a nation, Moore is a wonderful example of somebody so dedicated to the common good.
It's fitting that the relics come to Washington, D.C. St. Thomas More is the patron saint of politicians. Republican Congressman Tim Huelskamp says he has prayed to the saint.
St. Thomas More showed that serving in public life and politics can be a sacred calling. But as we see in his life and his inspiration is oftentimes it usually comes with difficult choices.
More was martyred for his choice when he refused to recognize Henry VIII as the head of the Church of England. Elsa Thompson is a member of the Thomas More Society of America. She has a personal devotion to the saint.
In this day and age, we are going to be tested. And I think we should all be praying to St. Thomas More for courage under adversity.
A man who served God and country, and his work continues today.
He's still healing divisions now, 500 years after his death.
Mark Irons, EWTN News Nightly.
Thanks, Mark, and may we follow that great saint's example. Watch again on YouTube, and thanks for sharing with your friends and family. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Jason Calvi. Good night, and God bless.